I've joined the African Union as the constitutionalism and rule of law expert.
I was appointed by the President of Liberia as the Assistant Minister of Foreign Affairs.
The main highlight since I left the ALC is completing my doctoral studies, and I explored rural policing in Plateau State, Nigeria.
I've been told that when you see them, you know they're from the ALC.
My major achievement is starting my PhD. I'm also an assistant lecturer.
I feel I have contributed to the growing peace and justice debate in the wider Karamoja cluster region of East Africa.
I'm the program lead in international relations and diplomacy at Sierra University. I teach international security, international relations, and peace building.
Since I came back from the fellowship in 2012, I joined the ALC as part of the research core staff.
In 2010, I established an organization called Women's Health Association of Ethiopia.
I'm at the University of Paris. The research I'm currently engaged in is focusing on northern Nigeria. I'm looking at the Boko Haram crisis.
You can see these voices across the continent, and you can then begin to see that this critical mass can begin to project a narrative about Africa. Before the fellows actually came in to King's 10 years ago, the major problem that I observed was a poor representation of Africans. When Africa actually represented 50 to 60% of the issues on the agenda of the United Nations Security Council. How people govern themselves, the terms on which they will live together were essentially decided by outsiders. There were little or no young Africans at the decision-making table. Rarely did you have young women.
In many cases that countries have gone into very serious wars and conflict precisely because people feel they do not have a say in what goes on in the everyday lives of their own countries. And for us to begin to deal with that, it's important to invest in training young leaders who can engage in some of these issues.
The idea was that we would build a next generation, a new generation of African scholars, analysts, policy decision makers who could take on the job, alongside others, of course, of doing critical thinking for the continent.
Quite a good number of them could operate outside their comfort zone.
We piloted the program for 3 years and brought 3 women to King's every year. More than 200 women applied for those 3 places every year.
As the Director of Gender at the National Election Commissions, I developed a 20% national strategy to increase women participation in the security sector. Today, the government of Liberia still uses that 20% strategy.
We started with working with 50 women, training them and also investing in their business ideas, and also training them about health and security and leadership and life skill. Now, in the past 5 years, we've been able to reach 750 women, and we're present in 9 regions out of 11, almost all over Ethiopia. And we have 250 women running their own business.
As the Assistant Minister of Foreign Affairs, I was able to help government delegations to high-level conferences and meetings that has to do with peace and security. I headed the Liberian delegation to the African Union preparatory meeting on the Armed Trade Treaty. Liberia is one of those countries in Africa that were able to sign and ratify the treaty. In fact, we are even implementing the treaty in Liberia.
Different some of the women I worked with the past 4 to 5 years who used to be firewood carriers, and now they are running their own business. They make such beautiful scarves, cushion covers and everything, and they're also exporting to different European countries and to East Africa.
The scale of the need was glaring to us, and this is how we started the fellowship program, expanded it, we upscaled it to become a program not just for African women but for young Africans. We also knew that this could not possibly be something that belonged to King's College London only. We then proceeded to establish the African Leadership Center at a location in Africa, and that location is Nairobi.
The fellows who are being trained need to be in Africa to experience the very aspects that they are being trained about.
And what we aim to do is achieve personal transformation for those individuals who will in turn proceed to transform their societies, their organization, their community.
My PhD study is focusing on citizen journalism and conflict in Africa, looking at people-centered approach to peacemaking. And this is a need to depart from state-centric, top-down approach when it comes to peace processes.
My doctoral study explored how the history of this rural policing landscape has evolved, but more importantly, the relationship between the police and vigilante groups, how they collaborate and cooperate.
I completed the ALC Women Fellowship course about 1 year ago. It's from this continental thinking and grooming that I developed a focus on governance issues in my country.
The most pressing element is to complete my PhD. It's about peace support operations in Africa and the case of transnational organized crime.
I want to explore people's participation in peace processes with the use of the new media technology. Citizen journalists report occurrences, especially in relation to peace and conflict, bringing first witness accounts into the fore through the new media platform.
I'm contributing to the production of an ECOWAS toolkit on security sector reform and governance. And my contribution is a toolkit on how to engage non-state security actors. Which types of non-state security actors should we engage with? What do they do? How do they function within our different countries across the West African sub-region?
I use this research on transitional justice in Karamoja to engage people in conversations around the post-disarmament context.
The question is whether the way Africa is intervening, carrying out its peace support operation, is it creating a breeding ground for the organized crime,
I think we have now trained about 101 fellows in 10 years. Even though they're anchoring their work on different areas around peace and security and they're located in different places, you begin to see regional clusters emerge. These fellows organizing in those clusters will contribute not just to national thinking, but also to regional thinking, as well as continental thinking.
I've joined the African Union as an expert who gives advice about how they should handle conflicts around issues of constitutionalism and rule of law.
My role at the ALC is really to change the narratives of peace building and state building in Africa. Part of the fellowship was to really empower scholars from the continent to come and also articulate issues at the same level with Western-based scholars.
I'm looking at the Boko Haram crisis, why we don't witness as much violence or insurgency in the Northwest compared to the Northeast.
I've had a great opportunity to work with the African Union on various issues, and I think the most recent one was actually attending the C10, Committee of 10 Heads of States, and they're trying to find 2 seats for Africa and a veto power for the African countries that will be selected to sit on the United Nations Security Council.
In the Northwest, we can actually identify spaces of resilience, constructive efforts, among communal actors. That is very important in terms of how we identify solutions.
What is emerging from our own research will really go in a long way in redefining how we view the continent.
One measure of our success is that at the end of a generation, we will be able to look at the continent of Africa and see 50 out of 200 to 300 people trained, see them clearly leading change, see them thinking for the continent and advancing the narrative of progress, of change for the African continent. That will be a solid sign of progress.